I remember lying on my futon and listening to WQXR, and Prokofiev's Waltz Suite came on. And I had been familiar with a lot of the music. Some of it is from Cinderella, some of it is from the opera War and Peace, and I fell in love with it again. I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to create a different kind of dance than I had been creating up to that point. Very musical, a great challenge actually, because a lot of the score is immensely bombastic. The orchestrations are enormous, and I thought it'd be a wonderful challenge to throw my craft into that sense of musicality.
I remember Doug talking about how he was going to approach this music because it was so popular and has been used so much, and he really wanted to find a new way into the work, and I think he did it through kind of the character, because his work is so human, and by kind of approaching it as a fairy tale, I think he came into the work in a new way than I had experienced with the company. It was really exciting for me.
I think Castles really showed me that Doug had this clever and positive, silly side that he could access easily, and once again it was helped by the Prokofiev score that he could conjure these characters, with a raised eyebrow.
I looked at each of the sections and tried to create an alternate type of fairy tale. The opening section basically sets the stage with 8 characters in space under Jane Cox's beautiful luminous lighting.
One of the things I love about Doug is that he's not afraid to put kind of magic on stage. I love the way Castles kind of plays into kind of childish fantasies of castles, palaces, princesses, all that kind of stuff. It's wonderful. It's a beautiful piece. I don't remember now whose idea was what, but I know that we looked at all these stunningly beautiful impressionist paintings and realizing how much the work was about color and how much the work was about framing and how much of the work was about kind of a contrast between the architecture of the stage and the impressionism of the background.
The second section is a duet for 2 men that could potentially be rival princes who might be more in love with each other than they are with the princess.
The highlight of Castles for me was the Jean Besant duet. There was a great playfulness to it. It was ambiguous, which I think was really kind of made it interesting. It was mysterious. It's kind of funny. So there's a lot of levels to that one. I think that's really interesting and really kind of fun to perform over the years and kind of change it up over the years.
The third section is called Crazy Quartet, and that just comes from the idea that the music sounds very much like those old Acme cartoons, Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner. If you listen to it really closely, there's this very humorous cartoon edge to it, and we tried to match that within the quickness and the speed of the quartet itself.
Castles was really fun to make, and we had this beautiful, I don't know how he did it, but he had this beautiful spiraling of solos. So we could interact and be intertwined with each other, and then each section could also stand alone. And at the end of all of this swirling came this sudden stop, which was actually my favorite part of the dance. Adrian and I come in quickly from stage right, and we do this lunge, and I remember him telling me to think about like a cartoon superhero, and it really fed my interpretation of the work throughout the quartet, and that it was one of the times where I did not feel human in his work, but I almost felt like some sort of mouse / cartoon.
The fourth section is a duet for a man and a woman, and I've always thought of it as the young stable boy who, has found the princess, and they have this illicit affair.
My duet with Eddie, I felt a sense of curiosity and a sense of wide-eyedness that was very different than the contemporary person I would normally inhabit for one of his pieces. So I could be in another century, I could be in another land.
In terms of creating the material, I placed myself in a very subtle, quiet frame of mind. And so whatever tasks or steps were given, movement that was given, my approach to it was to be simple, to find the subtlety in it, the quietness in it, without losing its energy. It brought in all these ideas of patience and allowance, and Natalie was just the perfect person to do all of that with.
The fifth section is for a female soloist in the group, and there's something quite Cinderella-like about it. The way she constantly is crossing the stage back and forth in alternate speeds, gestures that she is constantly pulling out of the air are reflective of ideas that come from fairy tale-like moments, a magic potion that gets drunk, an apple that gets eaten quite quickly. Every so often you'll see 4 mice move across the stage.
Doug used a process called room reading to create the movement for this. It's when he looks at a room and creates gestures that have to do with interacting perhaps with the items that are in the room. And so they take all these different gestures from around the room and combine them together, and that's how we made the gesture phrase.
Once again, they're all done in implied fashions, so the ideas are put out in front of the stage, but I'm never really truly saying, this is what this dance is about.
Initially, I looked at medieval manuscripts and art from that period. Think about what people wore if they were living in a castle during that period. Because the piece is a little brooding in its quality, I think we ended up going with a sort of a darker palette, browns and maroons and tans and kind of olivey greens. The line of the clothes still referenced some of the medieval garments in the pointy ends of some of the garments in the layering. There's a lot of horizontal lines.
The final section is a quartet for 3 men and a woman set to Cinderella's Grand Waltz. Beautiful, beautiful, soaring score in 3/4 time that we tried to embody in a very, very new and different way. It's the kind of score that you have heard over and over again, particularly if you know the ballet and you have certain connotations of it. All we tried to do was shift that connotation.
We were all part of that process, all 8 of us at that time, created as material for duets. Oh my, what a blast.
Within the creative process, I remember being incredibly frustrated because the score was just so overpowering. I would tear what little hair I had left out, and trying to figure out how to not be caught up in the hugeness of it, but to really honor it. And that was very difficult. And sometimes it meant moving in the complete opposite direction to what I was hearing. It's probably one of the most musical dances I've created in its ornateness. I tried to find a lot of the filigree within the score and accent that within the architecture of how the bodies are working in space.
The thing that strikes me most when I think back about castles is the extraordinary joy in the work. I mean, there's joy in everything that Doug puts up on stage, even at its most dark and aggressive. And that, honestly, is why I love to work with Doug. And Castles is one of those works where the joy is just not held back or repressed at all. It just springs forth from the dancers on stage.